welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed the top gold, silver, and crypto stories for the week ended June 17th, 2018. Gold and silver tumble was a big story during the week, as was Trump's visit to North Korea. And the Inspector General report finds no bias in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. The Fed raised interest rates and promises 2 or 3 more this year. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein threatens to subpoena congressional phone records. And in that IG report, we learned that Obama knew of Hillary's secret email server, something that I, Smaulgld, had noted way back in 2015 that it must be the case. Gold and silver tumble, as we mentioned. China and U.S. exchange tariffs. And the SEC, an SEC official says that Ethereum is not a security. Coinbase to add Ethereum Classic, an odd choice, to its lineup of cryptocurrencies that it will offer. And it also launched a crypto fund index. And a new study says Bitcoin was manipulated higher during that big run-up at the end of 2017. Now, before we get into the gold and silver action during the week and the rest of the stories, just a quick note. A little bit of a change in how we do the week in review. Since, for the last 7 to 10 days, I've been doing a nightly live stream where I cover in somewhat detail some of the major stories of the week, pretty much as they happen. And so this week, when we do the week in review, I will somewhat go through the stories a bit quicker, little light on the analysis, but if you're interested in any of the major stories that we're covering or did cover during the week, you can go back and check out the live stream videos, and if a particular subject interests you, you can hear a 35, 40, 50 minute discussion on that particular topic. So this way you can get your overview of the week in review in a shorter period of time, and if you want further information, you can go back and listen to the more detailed analysis in the live streams, and also you can join me every night at 8 o'clock as we go through some of the issues. This way we hit the issues as they arise, we do the analysis, we take questions, and this way you can either check in at the end of the week, you can get an overview, and then you could do a deeper dive by going back to the videos. Alright, so during the week we did a number of live streams, and you can see we won't be covering them in detail today, but we'll cover the content of what happened during the week. So we discussed whether Bitcoin was a Ponzi scheme or a fraud. We discussed the opening of the new Texas gold depository, a fairly long live stream on the details behind how that Texas depository works. We talked about Trump's historic North Korean meeting and the media reaction to it in another video. We talked about how the media was diverting attention with a few stories prior to the IG report's release. Then we had an interview with Silver Fortune, and then we did a pretty long analysis of the IG report, what was in it, how the media handled it, and what the fallout was from the release of the IG report. Yesterday we did a special report on how streaming companies operate. If you don't know what streaming companies are, I invite you to take a listen, and how they impact the price of gold and silver, and also the price of the gold and silver miners. So we won't go through those, but what I will do in this week in review, I will give the supplemental material. Usually what I do to get my ideas is I do a series of tweets on topic, and as you know, then we go through those tweets. When I do the live stream, I don't show the tweet, so you'll be able to pick up some additional information by going through this. Okay, so let's go through the gold and silver prices. Gold closed last week just under $1,300, and then it closed this week at $1,278. And silver closed the week before at $1,677 and shot down to $1,654. Now, the reason I say gold and silver tumble, that doesn't look like much of a tumble, but they had risen during the week. And there was a bit of a delayed reaction. I don't really know, no one really knows why gold and silver fell. It seems to be just because they did not fall immediately after the Fed's meeting where they raised interest rates, and they claimed that they fell because of the tariff war, but there really wasn't any specific impetus. And some people believe that it's just that when gold and silver, especially silver, get to that certain 200-day moving average, it just gets slammed down. And you do see it if you look at the charts, the amount of contracts that get sold, really just because it definitely looks like manipulation. You know, you can't prove it, but it is uneconomical. It wouldn't make any sense for anybody if they wanted to get the best price to sell all at once. Now, as to the gold-silver ratio, we've been talking during the live streams almost every night. We were going through the gold-silver ratio. Gold-silver ratio, finally it started to fall back. Silver had probably had 4 or 5 days where it was outperforming gold, which has been first for this year. And then when both gold and silver got hit during the week, silver got hit much harder. Silver went down almost 4%. Gold went down almost 2%. And then you can see right here, the gold-silver ratio had actually gotten down below 75.5. It was around 75.4. But then it shot up nearly to 78 again. And then it touched 82 to 1 earlier in the year. All right, enough on the gold-silver ratio. Let's get to the stories during the week. We covered the IG report and everything that was in there. Just a quick overview. The main takeaway was there were 500 pages in there about some of the things that the FBI had done wrong. Some of it was about bias. But the Inspector General, who is not a prosecutor and is basically just an internal watchdog, he would not conclude that there was really any errors in judgment and that there really was any bias that impacted the investigation. However, if you read it, you realize that the investigation appears to have been full of bias and full of a lot of bad judgments, things that you would not have normally done when you're doing a criminal investigation. It seemed like there were a lot of kid gloves. They didn't subpoena documents. They didn't impanel a grand jury. They certainly didn't do any raids to collect evidence. They gave people immunity. They let Hillary Clinton's lawyer sit in on her meeting. She wasn't questioned under oath. She was exonerated before she even had her meeting. So those are basically all the things that came out. And then the stroke guy who was running very high up in the investigation, and his girlfriend, who's Paige, who is a lawyer, she also, they were exchanging very negative Trump text with each other. So clearly there was bias, but they said that the bias did not impact the investigation. But I would say discerning minds would probably disagree. Okay, so that was the Inspector General's report. There's a lot more to it. I went through the report, and you can check out that on it's on BitChute and also on Smaulgld. As you can see, a lot of tweets here as they were happening during the week. And the reactions is just sickening. Corruption all the way through the oligopoly. And I have some quotes here from, we're not going to go through them, from Paige and also from Strzok, things that they were saying that clearly indicated a bias. The other thing about the investigation was the note that I had made, and subsequently I saw many others had made, including the president, was that the IG report read very much like Comey's July 5th, 2016 press conference, where he went through everything that Hillary Clinton had done wrong and then basically said, however, she didn't mean it, no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case, when most people would have thought after hearing that evidence they would bring a case. It was the same thing with the IG report. You listen, you read it, and you think there's a lot of bias here, a lot of errors in judgment, and then the IG concludes there was no bias and there were no errors in judgment as a matter of finding. Again, it doesn't really sound very much. And Hillary Clinton actually, she got out of this week's Veronica. I actually scrolled over it by mistake, but uh-oh. When she found out that James Comey also used a private Gmail account for official business, she tweeted in a self-defensive way, but my emails, as if, not that he should have been using private email, but he wasn't transmitting classified information. He was doing official business. But she had set up not only a private server, but she was using her private email for all sorts of things, and she was involved for years doing it, and she had some top secret information that she had transmitted. There's evidence that her server had been accessed by foreign actors. For her to act as if Comey somehow was on the same level of her. Yes, what Comey did was wrong, and we all know the old two wrongs don't make a right, but she was much wronger than he was. And then you had Christopher Wray come out, and he basically treated this as if it was again, I made this comment, and a lot of people made the same comment subsequent. It was almost like he was slapping on the hands of a high school student for coming late to class, that they're going to send the FBI agents to bias training. The bias was at the top. It wasn't the average FBI agent, and it's ridiculous that he thinks he's going to make sure that they all act non-biased in the future. And what's even more interesting is that the Attorney General, the Inspector General, said there was no bias. So why does he have to give training for bias when the report said there was no bias? Because obviously the report indicates a tremendous amount of bias. So overall, that's basically what happened with the IG report. Now, coming up, we're going to have another IG report, and that will factor or review how the FBI handled the Russian investigation. That would include how they got FISA warrants, what information they used, how long Stroke was on the Russian investigation before he got removed. He's now in the HR department, probably hiring people just like him. Okay, so then we had the Trump at the same time during the day the IG report was released. The not the Inspector General, but the Attorney General for New York, the successor to Schneiderman, who resigned in disgrace for harassing women, she brought a case against the Trump Foundation. And of course, Trump thinks it's a ridiculous suit. And this is the same Attorney General that basically took a pass on investigating the Clinton Foundation. Interestingly enough, the Clinton Foundation closed down when Hillary didn't become president. Now, isn't that interesting? While she was Secretary of State, or she was looking like she was going to be president, she was getting hundreds of millions of dollars from all types of foreign leaders. And then all of a sudden, all the good work that the Clinton Foundation was doing has just come to a halt. But yet no investigation there. Now, also during the week, Manafort was thrown in jail. I guess they consider him a flight risk, so Mueller is really ratcheting it up. They're talking about trying to get these people to flip, but if they don't have information on any Russian collusion, I don't know what they're going to get them to flip on, but that's what they've done to Manafort. He's been thrown in jail. Rosenstein is refusing to hand over the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, who's basically the acting Attorney General for all intents and purposes for the main Russian investigation. He's the one who appointed Mueller because Attorney General Sessions has recused himself. And while they're asking Rosenstein, the Congress, for documents relating to the Russian investigation, he doesn't want to give it to them, and he's threatening to subpoena their documents. And it looks like Trey Gowdy, a couple of the others, are very serious now about bringing contempt charges against him and also possibly impeaching him. That's Devin Nunes and all those guys talking about DOJ investigation. So we might have some fireworks during the week relating into the aftermath of the IG report. If so, we will cover that in a nightly live stream, and you're all welcome to join that, ask questions, provide your point of view as well in the comment sections. Now, this Dershowitz guy, he is a well-known, I would say, left-wing ACL, American Civil Liberties Union person. He is disgusted by the partisanship where he seems to be a believer in civil liberties, irrespective of who is the target, and he sees his liberal colleagues basically dispensing with a lot of the rules of law, the constitutional protections, just because of who the target is. He's not a Trump fan by any stretch, but he doesn't like the way that they have been conducting themselves, and he doesn't like what he saw in the IG report. He doesn't like what he saw in the fact that they had a spy in the Trump campaign and that they basically had these FISA warrants. So he's a civil libertarian, and he doesn't like what he's seeing. That doesn't mean he's for Trump, but Fox News picked up on him as being their in-house liberal, I suppose, to make their case. And you see CNN does the same thing. They find a Republican who's against Trump, and they bring that person in, and they think that somehow they have more credibility. Now, I want to talk about Obama and Hillary's email service, because this is becoming a big deal, email server. It says the IG report shows Obama lied about Hillary's secret email scheme. Now, clearly he lied about it, and here you have Obama basically talking about the first time I ever heard this was on the news. You know, as if this was news to him. And if it was news to him, you would think he'd be shocked by it, that somehow the person that works for him is Secretary of State is doing this type of stuff. You would think that the first time that he heard about it, if he did hear about it on the news, that he would be outraged. But he doesn't express any outrage. And this was when they first heard about it here. See if I can get to play this for you, where our former president says the first time he heard about it.
Learned that Hillary Clinton used an email system outside the U.S. government for official business while she was Secretary of State.
At the same time, everybody else learned it through news reports.
Were you disappointed?
Yeah, so the same time everybody else heard is when he heard it. Now, when I first heard about Hillary Clinton using the email servers, private email server, back in 2015, my first thought, and I have it documented here, was, well, Obama must know about it. If he doesn't know about it, he should know about it because he's responsible for her. She reports to him. And if you have illegalities going on in your administration, you're ultimately responsible under respondeat superior. But then I thought, he can't even claim he doesn't know about it because she was probably communicating with him, because Hillary would not want to be this rogue Secretary of State and keep Obama out of the loop, because that would make her out to be even worse. She'd be running an illegal scheme with no one knowing about it. No, I thought certainly he must be in the loop, because the last thing she would want to be is caught by Obama and be fired for doing that. But it appears, my guess was, he was receiving emails from her all the time. Well, it turns out that he was. Now, back in 2015, just to show you, here was the first thing I thought of, and they claim that this is going to be a big deal. Back in 2015, August 2015, a little Latin for all of those who are following the Clinton email server security breach, Obama's responsibility. Respondeat superior, which means that you have to answer to him and he's responsible. And then I'd been following this all through 2016. Of course, no one pays attention to me. Not that I'm not complaining that no one pays attention to me. I'm not saying here I am, I'm blowing the whistle, but I noted it all the time. If you look here, January 2016, Obama received emails from a Secretary of State from non-government accounts and did nothing. April 2016, there's also common law respondeat superior for employee misstatements, but that would also impact Goldman Sachs, not the CEO. Didn't Obama receive, this is May 2016, didn't Obama receive and send emails to Hillary at her private email account? So whatever, if Hillary was being investigated at the time, this is during the investigation in May, she got exonerated in July, I was thinking, why isn't he being investigated? Because he's responsible for her, and if he's receiving emails for her, that investigation did not cover Obama at all. To me, that's a huge mistake, because he is the one who's ultimately responsible for his State Department, his Secretary of State. Here I say you and I have mentioned this possibility for a year under respondeat superior. Back in October 2016, if Obama used private server with Hillary, he also handled classified information in a reckless manner, or worse. So in any event, it's something that I've been noting, but now we're seeing QAnon is on this as if he's some kind of... people follow this QAnon stuff. I say Luanon. I had this pegged years ago, and now all of a sudden QAnon has got some secret... here, he's dropping something here. Obama staff used Gmail drafts to collude with it. Like this is some kind of new thing. A little late to the party, I would say. I spent 2015-16 pointing this out under respondeat superior. Now, Trump went to Korea. We're not going to cover that, but there you can see the pictures. There he is sitting with... The main takeaway here was that he went there, and the press is making a big deal out of the fact that he gave away too much. We don't have any details. The same press that would have loved it if had Obama gone there, anybody who had done anything to try to denuclearize, you would think that that's what they'd be in favor of, but they're making it out to be as if Obama went to meet Hitler and told Hitler he was the best thing ever and gave away the United States and told him, come to America anytime you want. That's basically the takeaway. That's not what happened. And again, there are reasons to criticize him. I'm not defending everything he did, but the people that are criticizing the most harshly are the ones who would have acted exactly the way he did, would have encouraged him to act the way he did. In fact, many editorials were saying we need to have talks with North Korea without conditions. And once he goes there and has talks without conditions and tries to get something done, they criticize him for being weak. Now, a lot of things that happened during the week in the tariff situation. By the way, the dollar rose, and the United States crude oil output is up 30% in the last 2 years, up to 10.9 million barrels a day, leaping ahead of top exporter Saudi Arabia, who has 10 million barrels per day. Another thing, I noticed this back in December 2014, that this idea of the petrodollar being backed by Saudi oil, I saw the rise coming in U.S. shale oil. And I said, and you can see I've been tweeting about this, writing about this, doing YouTubes about this ever since 2014, that if you believe that the dollar is backed because countries need dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, who only price and sell oil in dollars, well, if that's what you believe, and that's partially true, but that's not the only reason foreign countries hold dollars, but if that's the case, if they're going to need those dollars because the United States is soon going to become the world's largest oil producer and exporter, and that has indeed happened, but yet you still have people trotting out the tired old end of the petrodollar, game over, game changer for the dollar, because they haven't graduated past a 2012-2013 narrative. They even went on before. So once you get these ideas in your head about game over and end of the dollar, dollar hegemony, multipolar world, and all this other nonsense that they spout, they can't get away from it. And they haven't seen that the world changes. And there's a reason. Had things continued the way they were when the Fed was at the height of QE and just looked like they were never going to stop, yeah, then it would be game over for the dollar. But what happened? The Fed stopped doing QE. The Fed tapered. The Fed rose interest rates, which they said they can never raise interest rates. Meanwhile, all the other countries, all the other foreign central banks, they launched their own QEs and lowered rates down to zero. So they're worse than the U.S. is at this current stage of the cycle. Bank of Japan, Bank of England, ECB, all with negative rates and massive QEs on their hand. The U.S., as Fed, has stopped QE, has raised rates. There's some big breathing room between the U.S. and the foreign countries to 1.75. It has reduced its balance sheet somewhat. And China has gone off on a debt binge like the world hasn't seen ever. So the United States dollar was the leader in 2009-10. Looked like it was going to create a disaster and the dollar was going to collapse. Now the problem for the world isn't the United States dollar. It's the entire, what you call, debt Ponzi scheme. But look at the dollar. Hegemony. It's hegemoning higher. Look at that. From 93 up to 94.6 during the week. Yep, for those that follow tired cliches and narratives like dollar collapse, end of the petrodollar, multipolar world, China to crush the dollar, Sun Tzu says this, Sun Tzu says that, gold back yuan, game changer, dollar just hegemons higher. That doesn't mean that someone asked a very astute question. It says, how can the dollar be rising when it's losing value? And the answer is simple. It's rising against the other fiat currencies. That's all. The dollar index is made up, I think it's 58% euro. Then it has some yen in the basket, some Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, and Swedish krona and Swiss franc. I think those are the ones that are in the dollar index. It just means it's getting stronger against those, which is my point. The reason the euro is getting weaker is because the euro, the ECB is still doing QE, is going to keep interest rates at zero to the end of 2019. You're going to have QE rolling through all through 2018. Overall, it's going to have printed more than the Fed did. That's the real reason that the euro is falling against the dollar. Bank of England has Brexit issues. Bank of Japan is a printing machine. Swiss franc has done everything. The Swiss National Bank has done everything it can to weaken its currency, but it's having a hard time. It's printed up $100 billion and bought U.S. equities. Then you got the Swedish kroner, which is only a small portion of the dollar index anyway. But now as to tariffs, I think Daniel Lacalle, he's a professor, he's making the same point I'm making, is this isn't a trade war. This is a negotiation using tariffs as the basis. People keep acting as if Trump is starting a trade war. And all he's trying to do is level out where Europe, Canada, China have big tariffs on U.S. imports or exports to their country. He's putting export duties on their products so that when they send products to the United States, there's a duty on them. And they complain about that and they say he's messing everything up. Well, yeah, because what he's trying to do is get them to lower their import duties on U.S. goods. And that's eventually what's going to happen. As he says, they really can't get around it because it has been one-sided if you look at the tariffs that there are. So when Trump puts a tariff on, a lot of people that are free traders saying he's screwing things up. He would be if he was putting tariffs onto products in a global financial system where there were none. But all he's doing is he's using those tariffs, as Professor Lacalle points out, as a negotiation. That's exactly what's happening. And so what China has done so far is to protect its own companies that are going to be hurt from Chinese tariffs. They're subsidizing them. But they're not going to want to do that forever. Eventually they'll realize, and they have done, they have lowered tariffs on certain goods, not just from the U.S., but others. But Trump went one step further. He put more tariffs on certain Chinese technologies. Interesting was that China reacted by saying they're going to put a tariff on U.S. oil coming in. Now that sounds pretty stupid to me. And I'll tell you why. Because you generally don't put tariffs on goods and services that you need and can produce at home. Now, you could argue that China can get their oil from other sources, and they can get some of it from Russia for sure, Iran definitely, Saudi Arabia, and so on. But remember, those countries are going to want the higher price. They're not going to... The whole reason that OPEC has agreed to cut production is because they know there's an oil glut, and it's being made worse by the United States hitting record production. So they're cutting back. So if China slaps a tariff on U.S. oil, it's going to make the prices higher for them. But they're not just going to be able to say, okay, well, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, whoever else, sell us your oil for cheap. So all that's going to do is make oil prices more expensive for China. So they're not really helped by doing that. And they're probably not going to hurt the United States because that oil will then just be consumed probably at home in the United States. And maybe the United States driver will be helped with lower gas prices because there'll be more oil not going to China. Well, as I mentioned, the Fed raised rates this week. It's now 7 times. And you remember, all the gold pumpers, the Fed can never raise rates. I don't want to name names, but all the major gold pumpers and people who do books and are on all the different shows, they can't raise them. If they do, they're immediately going to reverse course, and then they're going to do QE. And I said all through 2015 they would raise rates. I said in 16 if they have to, they do it again. They can never do it. The whole thing would collapse. They're going to be, next move is a rate cut. And now they're saying rate hikes are good for gold. But here's a list of the time the Fed never raised rates. They didn't raise them in December 15, December 2016. They continued to raise them. Here's the list of all the times they raised rates. March 17, June 17, December 17, March 2018, June 2018. They're going to raise them 2 or 3 more times. You know, what is 7 times never? And then you get the defenders always defending their gurus. I don't know how you can defend somebody who said never and somehow 7 is close to never. This isn't even close in horseshoes. But once you have it stuck in your head that these people are right and that they're always right, and they just get defended. That's just how it works. All right, let's go on from the Fed rate hikes and move away from the apologists and so on. In a nutshell, our friends don't want to give up their tariffs on us, and they don't want us to have tariffs on them. What's the confusion? Yeah, that's right. This Chuck Woolery guy is absolutely right. They want to have tariffs on the United States goods, and they don't want us to have tariffs on theirs. Because before the U.S. put tariffs on their products, there weren't any. But they had tariffs on U.S. products. So, again, by putting tariffs, and that's not a trade war. What that is a negotiation to say, knock it off. Here you go. How to win a trade war. Fight it, I say. Germany ready to discuss trade imbalance, just like China is. They know that they've had the upper hand in terms of tariffs. And that's going to change merely because they don't want to get, they know they're not going to be able to keep their cozy arrangement, their good arrangement. So they're going to have to negotiate the next best thing. This guy here, what the Wall Street Journal economist clowns don't realize is Trump isn't taking up tariffs to artificially boost our industry, but to lower the hurdles that artificially stunt them by blocking our access to foreign markets. That's all it is. He's playing poker with euros and calling their awful bluffs. A lot of people, even people that are free market people, think that he's playing protectionist or he's playing anti-free market. He's not. He's actually striving towards a more free market, and through this negotiation, as the call calls. And that's what I've been saying all along. It is a negotiation. It is not a trade war. Here, China threatens to scrap U.S. deals if the White House hikes tariffs on Chinese goods. Fine. Bring it on and come up with new trade deals, and they'll be more fair to both countries. The U.S. preparing tariffs on Chinese goods, the amount listed total $50 billion. Now, these are not big amounts, though, when you think about the total trade. You got $800 billion. You know, there's massive trade between the countries. But they're bigger than symbolic, and they could grow. But a lot of people think China holds all the cards because they're productive and so on. Nonsense, because a lot of that production that they do is subsidized. It's state funded. It's funded by state-owned banks that have no chance of getting that money back because a lot of their production is non-economic. And they say, well, they could just consume that stuff. They won't have the money to do it. They have more of an artificial economy than even the United States people think has. And a lot of the anti-dollar people are in such a fever pitch that somehow the dollar is the enemy, and they have this twisted worldview that China is going to crush the dollar and save the world, totally ignoring all the financial and forget social issues that China has. They just see China as the savior. Sun Tzu says this and Sun Tzu says that. But here's a guy, he says it's not a trade war, it's a negotiation. Trump knows Chinese tariff retaliations can hurt the U.S. economy. The economy that can get hurt is China's. They're dependent upon shipping cheap goods out and keeping the factories humming and keeping those 300 million people that they moved from the countryside into cities employed. They can't do that. They've got a massive problem on their hands. Besides the massive debt Ponzi scheme they need to keep that Ponzi scheme going. They can't suffer a loss in exports. And really bright move as far as I can tell, putting a tariff on oil that comes in from the U.S. and making it even more expensive for them means they're going to have to print more money to buy oil at a higher price. Here, the CDM is absolutely right. EU outrage over Trump's tariffs is a shameless double standard. I mean, who are they kidding? They have tariffs on the United States products, and when the United States wants to put tariffs on theirs, they act like, what is going on? This is not free trade. Yeah, it's not free trade. Never was. All right. And U.S. announces 25% tariff on Chinese technology. And here's what I say about the tariffs on China. Fools gamble. You don't put tariffs on oil from the United States into China on things you need and can't produce yourself. China surprises with threat on U.S. energy exports. Yeah, and they also get a lot of natural gas from the U.S. Are they going to tax? They're going to put a tariff on that too. It's the worst thing you can do. You're shooting yourself in the foot when you put tariffs on stuff. But they think they're hurting the United States by doing it. I don't think so. Big flaw. All right. Well, this is something I've mentioned a long time ago, but it still holds. Is the problem with the EU is the member states are required to adopt sensible fiscal policies, which means how much their governments can spend at all, and they're kept to that. That's part of their being in the EU. They don't necessarily have to be austere policies, but generally governments are not austere. They live outside their budget and they run budget deficits. But being in the EU, they're not allowed to stray that far. But the ECB can conduct reckless monetary policy, as we've seen with the zero interest rates and all of the QE that they're doing. And finally, other people are noticing China is in trouble. Story in Zero Hedge. Well, but they have gold and Sun Tzu. Game changer. Yeah, so China's not in the best shape, but people keep thinking that they are because they've heard from the gold pumpers that they are buying gold hand over fist. They understand gold. They understand Sun Tzu. They understand game changer and gold back yuan. And gold exchange on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. End of dollar hegemony, multipolar world, crush the dollar. They just mindlessly repeat this stuff as mindlessly as I mock them. Multipolar world. Alright. Now, here's a question I asked today. Let's move on to cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency's done. I mean, they're down 60, 70, 80%. Many of them. Let's see what we say here. I just put this up tonight. And what do people think? At least Smaulgld followers on Twitter, well, 3/4 of them think that this is just a pause that refreshes for cryptocurrencies. 1 in 4 of Smaulgld followers, or at least people who saw the poll of the 37, they think that the best days are behind cryptocurrencies. Obviously, we'll follow that. All right, there's Coinbase saying they're going to add Ethereum Classic to Coinbase. Not sure why they're adding that one. That's not a very highly traded coin, but that's the one. I think probably because they feel comfortable that it's not going to be a security. Who knows, according to the SEC. Coinbase Index Fund is open for investment. You got to have 250 large to be in this, at least, to be an accredited investor. Not sure how many people will invest in it as a 2% management fee, but I think they were able to charge that because a lot of institutional investors or even people with a lot of money may feel more comfortable having it in a fund that's registered and they don't have to worry about whether they're in compliance. And it'll give exposure to all the assets that are on the Coinbase platform. So that would be Bitcoin, Bcash or Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Litecoin, and now they'll eventually add Ethereum Classic. Licensed trust. Now, there's a company called ItBit, I think it is, in New York. It has passed the New York licensing requirements. I think it's the only one in New York that has, and it's going to add Ethereum, Litecoin, Bcash, Lumens, and it already has Bitcoin. So that probably, again, a lot of good news coming out of the Bitcoin, Litecoin space, innovations and so on. But that news is not going to make up for, that's all priced in when Bitcoin went to 20,000. I mean, no matter what news you come out with now, it's hard to sustain that it just keeps going up. Remember, there's no valuation on Bitcoin. You really can't value it. So I think it's going to be a while before it heads back up if it does. All right. We had a discussion, we did discuss this during the week. There's somehow, here, Dave Kranzer, what's up with Bitcoin? I thought cryptos did not have counterparty risk. They don't. They just are. It's only when you put them on an exchange they have counterparty risk. Gold has no counterparty risk unless you hold it in a third-party vault. Then it has counterparty risk. Been saying it. I love when people say they've been saying something for a long time. You could be wrong for a long time. It doesn't make it any more right that you've been saying it. The only time it makes it more right is if it is right. It's not an opinion, and you spotted something 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and you're absolutely right about it, and now everyone else realizes it's right. But if you just have an opinion, you've had an opinion for 10 years, it could be a wrong opinion. Holding a wrong opinion for 10 years is really not necessarily something to brag about here. All right. Now, this Bitcoin's price was artificially inflated last year. This is a big study, but you know, there was a guy named Bitfinex. I'm not saying that this study proves anything, but I had covered it too back in November. I called it the Tether controversy. There's a theory that Bitfinex, which is an exchange, supposedly is also the owner or issuer of this cryptocurrency called Tether, which is supposedly tied to and backed by US dollars, that they would manipulate the price higher of Bitcoin. Not going to go into the ins and outs. If you can check out I think an okay job of explaining it here, but the point is, and this isn't my original research, this is me just regurgitating what others had said, but this isn't new. This was back in November. People were saying that this had happened. I did give one alternative reason to deny that maybe it wasn't being manipulated by them, that the reason that more tethers are being created was because when people sold their Bitcoin, they had to turn them into something, so they turned them into tethers. They were saying that they automatically issued tethers when the Bitfinex did, that when the price of Bitcoin fell in order to then buy Bitcoin. But it could also be that the people that sold the Bitcoin bought the tethers, and that was the correlation. But in any event, my point is, this is not a new story, but they're trying to make it out to be like it's this brand new story. Just like Obama, with his knowledge of Hillary Clinton's email server. That was apparent to me in 2015. It's no more apparent now than then. It's just that it gets picked up in the major media outlets. And this story was in Bloomberg. It was in all the stories how Bitcoin was manipulated higher. Yeah, I love when they always have these stories where they base the whole story on the price of wherever Bitcoin is. They could say it's crashing or it's peaked or whatever it is. 10 minutes after you write the story, the price goes dramatically in the other direction. So it's a big note. Don't write stories based on the. I mean, you can write stories based on the price over 3 months. That's fine. When they talk about today Bitcoin crashed or today Bitcoin soared, the minute they hit submit on that, whatever it soared to, by the time it hits the wire, it's lower, and whatever it crashed to, it's already rebounded. So I don't know why they do that, but they like to put out stories like that. Well, the BIS, no surprise here, says Bitcoin is useless, unsafe, and dirty. Okay. Now, CFT Commissioner, cryptocurrencies proliferate every economy in every country. So the U.S. regulators, the CFTC, the SEC, they don't seem to be very much against cryptocurrencies. They seem to want to regulate them. They seem to want to bring them to market in a rational way, but they don't seem to want to ban them at all. And here we have the SEC officials say Bitcoin and Ether are not securities. Now that's what I had come down to months and months and months ago. Actually, I wrote something in 2014 on this saying that they weren't. They don't meet the definition of security. I'm not going to go through why, but they're not ICOs where you're going to, or tokens where you get some benefit on what the DAO does. They definitely are securities. They need to be registered under U.S. security laws. But cryptocurrencies, tokens, things that just are and people value because they want to have them, not because there's any benefit from someone doing something to them. They're just going to rise in value, just like gold isn't a security. It just is. It's a lump of something, and it doesn't require humans to do anything to make it rise or detract. In fact, humans really can't do anything to harm gold. All they can do is destroy it, but then they're not destroying the gold. What I mean by destroy it is they can cover it in tungsten, or they can plate tungsten. That doesn't make the gold worth anything less. It just means that that's fraud. They're selling you tungsten. All right, so Ethereum went up on that, but it's since come down. There really hasn't been any meaningful rally in the last couple of weeks in the cryptocurrencies, and we'll see how that happens. Here's how streaming companies impact the price of PMs and also the miners. Not going to go through that, but please check that out. And I think we're about done. There's a few gold stories during the week. You could check those out. They're interesting stories. Salivate Metal covers some of them. I don't send them all to him, but he'll go through all these. He'll take a story and give you a nice review of the story. I don't do that as much. I don't have the time to do that. He spends a lot of time showing the gold and the silver and the stories. That's where he spends his time. I try to spend it a little more broadly on other things, but I think between the two of us, you get a good overview of the markets. London gold market demand, green credentials for producers. And there's a story on Texas opens a gold depository, and I did a YouTube on that as well. Now, I asked people whether they would put their gold in the gold depository, and about 2/3 said they wouldn't. 2/3 of them said they wouldn't, so they'd rather keep it at home. I actually like it. I think if it was near my house, I would put, if I had gold to put in, and I didn't want to have it in Brinks or somewhere where you can't go. I would like the idea where you can go and get it rather than have to call or write and to sell it. I mean, you can, at least this way, you can go to the depository and get it maybe sell it to a local coin shop or whatever, where you can at least know it's there. They have pictures of it. You have an account. Some people don't trust that, but you know, it's the same with money in your bank. You can go to the bank, but they're not going to show you your money because it isn't there either, your cash. So the idea that you can go into the depository and see your gold and visit it, I like the idea. Okay, what else do we got? Uzbekistan tempts tourists with bars of gold. They're selling small bits of gold instead of the big bars. Another gold ETF has come out. Japan is doing gold exploration again. China and Russia are working on a gold mining project. So lots going on in the gold space. Gold set to skyrocket. Let's see if we can get to the gold pumper. I'll close out with the goldpumper.com, as I call it, and the Bitcoin pumper and the silver pumper. Yeah, Tim Draper, what is he saying here? Gold, he's a Bitcoin pumper. He's an investor, and now he's on Twitter, and his prediction is still Bitcoin bullish. He explains, he's got proof. Well, Bitcoin will hit 250,000 in 2022. Yeah, it's going to hit 250,000 in 2022 because he has it. That's why it's headed higher. Same with the rest of the pumpers here. Yeah. Gold pumper, let's see. From October 17th, at the height of gold back yuan game changer. Yeah, here's what I said in October. There will be a yuan-denominated oil futures contract, but no indication that it will be backed or redeemable in gold. That's what I said. That's what happened. There are people now saying, I said there would never be a yuan-denominated oil futures contract. No, I always said there would be one. Because that's what China announced they were going to do. They never said anything about game changer or gold back yuan or yuan convertible on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. I heard every gold pumper, the major ones, the minor ones, repeat that story. Oh, and all you got to do is just take your gold, your yuan, and bring it to the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and game changer, you're going to get gold. No, you're not. That's not going to happen. Never was going to happen. You'll see. It's going to happen in September now. It's the latest pump. It's going to happen. China is October 2017. That comment above I just read was right after this October 2017 story came out in the Asian Nikkei Review. Game changer. Shift gold. China aims to dethrone the dollar with a gold back yuan. Yeah, gold back my eye. And they never changed that story. All they did was they just changed it. They took the gold backing away, and they made it sound like it's still a big deal. It's the petro yuan. It's the petro yuan. It's going to crush the dollar. It's going to end dollar hegemony. Gold 50,000. Always big. Shock the world. End of the petrodollar. Gold set to launch. Yeah, 2 + 2 = gold. Paradigm shift. End of the petrodollar. End game. Game changer. Gold back yuan. Unsustainable. End of dollar hegemony. COMEX default. Silver set to skyrocket. No one's considering the possibility of this or that. Few understand. Multipolar world. It never ends. And people listen to this stuff. They've been listening to it for 10 years. There's no indication that it's ever going to change, and that's what they think it is. 'Tis but a scratch. I like when gold drops or silver drops. And they say, that's because the banks are desperate. They dumped $20 billion at it. They can only drive it down 4%. Yeah, 'tis but a scratch. Yeah, they're desperate. They can only get it down 4%. Like 3 years ago, they'd have to drop only $5 billion. And now they have to drop $20 billion to knock it down 4%. We're winning. Yeah, you're winning. Unbelievable. As you're losing money, you're claiming that you're winning. Yep. Keep the subscribers subbing. It's evidence that the bankers are losing control. Elites are losing control. There's one. Alert. Shock the world. Multi-billionaire Hugo Salinas Price. Trump may shock the world by putting U.S. back on gold standard. He's not going to put the U.S. on a gold standard. Shock the world. Yes, you'll see. He's going to shock the world. Here's another story in Zero. Gold preparing to launch. On that date, a month ago, price was $12.95, and since then gold has launched to $1,285, a loss of $10. Well, he's just early. When's it going to launch? When it's set to launch, you kind of think it might happen in a few weeks, maybe a month. No, something happened. Didn't happen. Bull signal. James Turk says massive silver base may finally be ready to explode higher. It's always going to explode higher. Rocket higher. There's Keith Newmeyer. You ready for it? Silver will rally to 130. Gold to $8,000. Of course it will. It's on its way up. All right. Alert, alert. Alert, alert. COMEX vaults are empty. There's another one. Yeah, 280 million ounces in the COMEX vaults. Oh, they're lying. It's not really there. And then when you tell them JP Morgan has it, oh, well, it's there and JP Morgan has it because they know what's coming. They're preparing. You can't win. If they tell you don't trust the number. First they tell you there's no silver in the COMEX vaults. Then you show them that there is silver in the COMEX vaults. And then they say, well, they're lying. Then you tell them, well, it's JP Morgan that owns it. And they say, well, JP Morgan has it because they know what's coming and they're accumulating silver. And then you tell them, how do you know it's there? You just said there wasn't any silver in the COMEX vault. Never ends. And then you don't even know if it's JP Morgan silver. You don't know who owns it, whether they're holding it for clients. You also don't know if they're holding it so that they can use it to short if someone wants to stand for delivery. All right, that's about it. There's a lot of other stories here. You can flip through them at your leisure on the Smaulgld.com website. I hope you enjoyed this. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please consider donating to Smaulgld, becoming a Smaulgld patron, donating via PayPal, Bitcoin, or Litecoin. All the links are on the Smaulgld site below this BitChute and below this YouTube. Thanks for listening.